we're going to talk about something that makes up all of life. They are the 4 biomolecules. And before we get into what the 4 biomolecules are, we need to talk about some vocabulary. So one vocabulary word that we need to know is the word monomer. Okay, monomer. A monomer is a building block. So for example, if I had some large substance, the parts that make up that substance are called monomers. They're like building blocks. So we're going to talk about monomers a lot today, and that's just a vocab word that we need. So remember how I said that there's 4 biomolecules that make up life, and we're going to mention all 4 of them today. We're going to talk about what their monomers are. Again, that's building blocks. What elements make them up, and their function. Okay, so let's talk about these. So the very first one are carbs, carbohydrates. Carbs are something that you've probably heard about when people are talking about diets. You know, they try to go low carb, or maybe they want a lot of carbs. Diets always come and go. But carbs are actually a very important source of energy. In fact, that's one big function for carbs. Great, fast source of energy. If you were a marathon runner, you might want to eat a lot of carbs the night before a race. Lots of marathon runners, they do something called pasta loading. They eat a big pasta dinner the night before they're going to go out on their marathon. Now, carbs have a monomer. Again, remember, monomers are building blocks. The monomer for a carb is called a monosaccharide. I know that's a big mouthful, but monosaccharides make up a carbohydrate. Next thing, lipids. Lipids are better known as fats, and they have 2 monomers, actually. Their monomers are called a fatty acid and a glycerol. Okay, fatty acid and glycerol. Those are the monomers for lipids. Now, lipids have a lot of great functions. You might think, well, it's fat. How good can fat be? Well, it just depends when you put it into context. For example, you know those really adorable seals that you see on calendars? They have this fluffy white hair. They're actually called a harp seal. Well, they're actually only fluffy, white, and cute when they're babies. When they get old, they're not quite as cute. But is their little baby stage, they actually have lots of fur that they're born with that help keep them warm. But over time, they have to develop this stuff called blubber. It's fat, and it helps them actually keep warm. It's an insulating thing. Lipids actually are great for insulating. Also, you might not think about fats as being very related to energy, but fats are a great source of long-term energy. They can store energy for a long, long time. So say, for example, you wanted to swim the English Channel. By the way, that's like 21 miles of swimming. And the fastest swimmers might be able to do that in 7 or 8 hours, but, you know, it might take a lot longer for the average swimmer, maybe more like 25, 26 hours. That's a lot of swimming. Well, you would want to make sure that your body has enough lipids, enough stored fat that it can pull upon, because after you burn off that carbohydrates, which remember are fast sources of energy, you might not have enough energy storage unless you have some lipids on hand. So lipids also, by the way, make up cell membranes, so they are very important for life. Of course, an excess amount of lipids could be a bad thing for your health. You know, it's all about moderation. Okay, next big biomolecule are proteins. Proteins, when you hear about proteins, a lot of times you think about these power bars that say has lots of protein in it, and it tells you that, you know, they want to build it for muscle building. Protein's great for muscle building. Its monomer, remember monomers are building blocks, are called amino acids. So sometimes you see these labels that say it has 20 amino acids in this food. Really, they're just trying to say, well, it's got protein, and protein is made up of amino acids, so that's just some fancy advertising for you. Proteins, though, are really important for muscle development, but they have a lot of other functions. They're actually involved in the immune system, and proteins, when we talked about enzymes, remember enzymes are made of proteins. So proteins are very important for the body. When we start talking about genes, like DNA genes, not the genes that you wear, genes code for proteins that make up a lot of different things in your body, and so we will get there shortly. Okay, the last big biomolecule is known as a nucleic acid. Nucleic acids include DNA and RNA, which we'll get to when we get to genetics. They have a monomer called a nucleotide. That's going to be a really easy one for you to remember, because nucleotide kind of sounds like nucleic acid. And again, they're going to code your genetic traits. They are found in a lot of your food, because whenever you eat something that came from something living, it actually could still have DNA in it. For example, when you eat strawberries, you're actually munching all the cells that make up that strawberry, and in the nucleus of all of those cells of the strawberry is DNA. So actually, nucleic acids are something that can be found in your food. Remember, plants and animals both have DNA. In fact, any type of life must contain nucleic acids, DNA, to direct the cell's activities. So we just went through the 4 biomolecules. The last thing I want to mention is that it's very important to know which elements make up the biomolecules. And so what I like to tell students to do is to write the 4 biomolecules in this order on a sheet of paper. I want you to write carbs, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. And then I want you to remember this mnemonic device that goes with those 4 biomolecules. Cho, cho, chon, chomp. Except instead of chomp at the end, it's not chomp with an M, it's chomp with an N. Okay, now I know that sounds kind of strange, but actually students really seem to pick this up. And what they stand for is the C stands for carbon, the H for hydrogen, the O for oxygen. So carbs, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids all have that CHO in there. It's just that proteins also have an N, which is nitrogen, and nucleic acids also have that N, which is nitrogen, but they also have a P, which is for phosphorus. So again, cho, cho, chon, chomp. Okay? If you can remember that, you can remember the elements that are in those 4 biomolecules. Now, you may also need to know the way they are arranged, because they are arranged differently in the 4 biomolecules, and they do have different ratios of those elements. So you might want to take a look at some pictures of those online so you can kind of see how they look. They're a little bit different. Well, that's it for the Amoeba Sisters, and just a reminder to stay curious.